Hello everyone and welcome to this patching tutorial video for Gotharman's Urano modular synthesizer. Now, because it's a modular synthesizer in a box that also communicates with modular synthesizers outside of this box easily, it is no doubt quite a complex device and you need to do patching because that's just what a modular synthesizer requires. Luckily for us, there are several ways to patch those connections inside the Urano, and I want to go over all of them with you right now in this video so that you can have more fun and more efficient patching right from the get-go. Now, for this tutorial video, I've created a clear preset for the Urano. And this has nothing connected internally, so this thing doesn't make any sound at all right now. If you want to download this clear preset and import it via USB onto your own Urano, you'll find a link to that in the video description. First of all, let's have the Urano make a sound. And for this I'm going to use the standard patching technique that you'll also find on other Gotharman instruments, like the Little Deformer 3, for example. For this I will go to the Edit page and then to Outputs. And on the output module we have 4 inputs and none of them are assigned right now, so we don't hear anything from the stereo outputs. So let's connect oscillator 1 to input 1 of this module. And for this I will just simply turn the top left potentiometer until it says oscillator 1. Of course we don't hear anything yet because we haven't turned up the volume of that input. And for this we go to Levels and turn up the input volume. Okay, now we can hear the output playing input 1's connected module, and that is oscillator 1. Let's go to oscillator 1 real quick and change the waveform. I'll exit out of here, go to oscillator. We have oscillator 1 selected, and I can just turn the wave knob. Yeah. Let's do something triangular like this and exit out. Okay, so this is our first connection. We've now patched oscillator 1 into the input 1 of the output module. So far so good. But as I said, and as you probably know already, there are also other ways to do patching. Let us now connect a filter between the oscillator 1 and the output module. To do this, I'm going to the Edit page again, go to DGF, Digital Gotharman Filters. Digital Filter 1 is selected. And now we want to place this between those other 2 modules in the signal path. And for this we have a shortcut, and it is the PLC button for place. Let's press this, and it'll show us the module overview and ask us place module after. So we want to place the digital filter 1 after oscillator 1, which we just patched into output 1. So we simply press oscillator 1 to insert the filter after oscillator 1 in the signal chain. That's it. We can go back to module, to the input, and you will see that it automatically patched oscillator 1 to the input 1 of the digital filter 1. It turned up the level, and then when we go to the output, we will see that now input 1 is not oscillator 1 anymore, but the digital filter 1. So it actually inserted this digital filter into the signal chain between oscillator 1 and the input 1 of the output module. Let's turn up the volume again and listen to how that sounds. Let's go back to the digital filter. And now we can play with the cutoff and the resonance. We can boost the signal and, do our thing. So this place button is very handy if you just want to quickly insert a module into an audio signal chain. Okay, let's try out another way of patching a module. Now let's add a second oscillator into that digital filter, because as you've already seen on the input pages, we have 3 inputs as well, so we can actually mix 3 signals together into that digital filter. And inputs 2 and 3 are still unconnected. For this, we will use a different technique. Let's go to the part overview screen. And now let us patch oscillator 2 into digital filter 1, but without going out of this menu. And this is actually pretty cool, and now it's getting a little more complex, but also a lot more fun once you know a little bit the way around this synthesizer. So right now we have the selection mode enabled, so I can just simply press on a module and have that selected. So when we want to go to output 1, it is selected, and when I press module now, we will see the output 1 menu. When I press DF1 and go to module, we will see the DF1 menu. But now we can also change that mode into input. We have MO1, that is the modulation 1 input, MO2, modulation 2 input, and INP, which is audio input. And here we can now see that oscillator 1 is blue, so that means it's connected to the currently selected module digital filter 1. So now to connect oscillator 2, we simply press on oscillator 2, and it now has oscillator 2 marked. And when we go to the module now, we will see that on the DJF1 inputs, it has now oscillator 2 assigned to the input 1. But that's actually not really what we wanted, right? We wanted to connect both of them. So let's go to input again and connect oscillator 1 again. Go to the module, and now oscillator 1 is in input 1. So it appears right now that it's always connecting it to the first input, but we have 3 of them. So how can we do that? Very easily. If you remember, those knobs are corresponding to the 3 input assignments. Let's go back and I'll just show you real quick. Input 1, input 2, input 3, those 3 knobs. Let's go out of there. So now when we go back to the input patching mode, we can turn potentiometer 2, and you will see that also there's this connection happening. And then we press oscillator 2, and now both are selected. Go back to the module, and now we have oscillator 2 on input 2 and oscillator 1 on input 1 as it was before. So again, you go to the input mode, you turn one of those 3 knobs just to assign the next touch to inputs 1, 2, or 3, and then you press what you want to patch into, the currently selected module. And now I pressed oscillator 3, so now we have oscillator 1, 2, and 3 connected to the individual inputs. But you can also see that the levels are turned down, and of course we could turn the levels up now using the knobs down here. But this is also possible from the overview screen. So let's turn up the volume so that you can hear what that sounds like. Right now we already know this. It is just oscillator 1 through digital filter 1. So when we're in the input select screen, those 3 knobs now correspond to the 3 inputs volume. So when I turn this up, oscillator 2 is turned up in volume. And when I turn this down, oscillator 1 is turned down low, and now everything is turned down low. And this will turn up oscillator 3. So let's make this super loud. Let's make oscillator 2 in the middle and oscillator 1 a little quieter. And when we go to the module input page now, you can see that our values are actually in here. So we're totally able to connect all audio inputs and also adjust the volume for all inputs from this overview screen. And if you pay close attention right now, you will have noticed that this mode indicator down here also indicates into which menu we will jump when we press the module button. So when I press MO1 for modulation page 1, we are at the digital filter mod 1 page. When I go to MO2 and press module, we are at the modulation 2 page. And as we've already seen, when I press input and go to module, we're on the inputs page. So from the overview, we can also quickly navigate into certain menus. So in the back, those menus are already open actually, and this is why all those knobs correspond to the menu items. So let's say we want to connect an LFO to modulate the filter cutoff frequency of DF1. Then we go to the MO1 page, because on the MO1 page we have our cutoff here on pot 1, MO1, and then let's just press the LFO. I'll turn up the volume and turn up the modulation amount. Let's go back into the module page, and here we see that knob 1 set LFO1 as an input, and the amount was created with edit knob 5 down here. Again, let's look at this process. I go to the modulation page 1, I turn a knob, press what I want. I can also add a second modulation, for example, an oscillator. So I'll turn knob 2, press oscillator 2, and now the second cutoff modulation is oscillator 2, but the amount is still at 0, which would be this knob down here. But I can also, when I go to MO1, just turn it down here to apply the effect. Let's turn down the volume. So this is a very quick way to patch and affect the modulation strength or input volume strength of certain connections right from this overview screen. And it's incredibly powerful, so definitely play around with this and get used to the way of working. Again, you want to go to the page or to the mode, audio input, modulation 1 or modulation 2. Then you turn a knob for the input or the modulation source assignment. Then you press what you want to have, and then you just dial up the amount. But of course, depending on which module you're working with, those modulation sources and amounts do change, so you have to be a little bit familiar with those. But for the inputs, for the audio inputs here, this is usually the same. Input 1, 2, 3 are on those knobs, and the levels 1, 2, 3 are on those knobs. Okay, that's all really cool, but maybe we don't just want, a drone sound like this. We want to have a VCA modulating the amplitude of everything. So for this, we can select VCA 1, go to the module page, and then I would personally use the place feature again. Let's press the place button and place it after digital filter 1 in the chain. Go back to module, input, now we have digital filter 1 on input 1. And then we could sequence that by assigning it a trigger. So let's assign trigger 1, which would be sequence number 1. And let's just press start, go to sequence, no track 1 here. And we can add some triggers now. I'm just quickly going to do this from the template screen. Range 100, random steps. So now we have all steps with triggers. We can go to the gate menu, affect all gates, turn them down to 1, so gate length is 1. And now when we go back to our VCA, we see that it's being triggered by trigger 1, and we can shape the envelope curve. And this is basically how you connect a sequencer to a VCA, for example. You simply assign it to the trigger. But now our oscillators don't play a melody because they are actually not assigned to a trigger or a sequencer, and we can change that simply by, for example, assigning oscillator 1 to trigger 1, and when we go back to the sequencer, I'm just going to use the touch screen for that right now, we can draw something, press play. Select oscillator 2, also assign that to trigger 1, change the waveform. Oscillator 3, which we also have connected. And now all of those oscillators are being played by sequencer number 1. Okay, and that's it for this video. I hope this gave you a good overview of the patching capabilities of the Urano, and as you've seen, this overview screen is a tremendously powerful and fun way to do patching real quickly, but also do not forget the place button down here to place a module into an audio signal chain. And of course the button up here, rem, is for remove, and this will let you remove this from the signal chain. So let's just quickly do that as well. I'll turn up the volume, and if I press remove, it'll just ask me, really? I say yes. Whoa! So now the VCA is gone, so we have the drone sound again, but of course our oscillators are now all tuned differently because they are still listening to sequence 1. Anyway, I think you get what I mean. Use those place and remove commands, but also use this overview. And actually that's how I work as well. I just use whatever is convenient at the moment that I'm patching, and it's really nice of Fleming to have implemented all those features and different ways of patching, so you basically always have a good option to quickly get to a result. Okay, so now that's really it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching. Please post your questions below in the comments, and like, share and subscribe if you want to, and see you next time for another Urano video.